Welcome everybody. If there's anybody out there, I hope the sound is okay. Let me know. Tonight is a impromptu stream, not planned until this morning, but after last night's reveals, I feel like we need to just talk about things a little bit. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about last night's Games Workshop 40K reveals at Adepticon, which is going on right now. I think you would be hard pressed to not at least be a little bit excited. And it was interesting because Mike Brandt was on the stream, and not just the usual kind of GW presenters, which is interesting because he's the guy in charge of GT play and competitive play. And he's not in charge of all organized play, but just like the competitive stuff. And been talking a lot because he's been responsible for all this qualifier status. And so it was interesting to see him on the stream as well. Anyway, so we're going to talk about all the 40K related stuff tonight, including, you know what I'm talking about. So before we do that though, a couple of things. First of all, CanHammer Team Tournament list corrections ends right now, 8 o'clock, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So all the list corrections will be in. We'll be liaising with the captains to make all the corrections, and then we will publish the full list document as soon as we can on the Facebook page, and people can then upload the final lists onto BCP for everyone to look at. So that is coming in the next 24 to 48 hours. And then next week, Wednesday, which will be the 23rd to 30th, 8 p.m., same time as usual, will be, no, not 30th, 29th, will be the CanHammer Team Tournament 2023 pre-show. As usual, I'll be rolling the missions, and we'll be doing live pairings. And so that'll be next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here live. So do tune in for that if you're interested in the CanHammer Team Tournament. I know all the captains usually watch, and if you do miss it, I'll post all that information up on the page after the show, so no big deal. And then, of course, next weekend is CanHammer Team Tournament 2023, which we're super excited about, and I think we're ready to go. This weekend is Nick's tournament up in Petawawa, All Is Dust, which I think is sold out, and a lot of people going up there, so big shout out to Nick for getting that going. And so I hope everybody does good up there. I'm on call this weekend, and so I cannot go, and you know, it's hard to go for 2 days these days, and we have competitive dance and lots of reasons why. But anyway, so shout out to everybody going up there. I know Francois and Phil, everybody's going up there, so that's great. Support all these events. I can't remember if Nick got qualifier status for All Is Dust. It's very possible. Of course, CanHammer Team Tournament is qualifier status event for the GW World Championships. We are giving away 5 tickets. We have 5 tickets, so that's going to be exciting. And of course, Capital City Bloodbath, we have qualifier status as well. Okay. KR Quintero, welcome. It does not show me as live. I'm definitely live, so I'm not sure why that is, but hopefully we get some people watching. And while I drone on about all the reveals. Okay. Let's pull up this thing. So before I talk about 40K, the only other thing I'm going to talk about from that reveal is, man, those Seraphon models look amazing. Like, that's the kind of thing that gets you to start playing Sigmar again, you know? And, you know, there is an entire, it's not here, but an entire Beast of Chaos army, brand new shrink wrap still in box in my closet, which I could see myself exchanging for Seraphon after that reveal. Those models were amazing, especially the big Croxagors. Oh, that's awesome. I always said, and people know me, know I've always said in Sigmar, if they ever allow me to play a whole army of giant dinosaurs, then I'm in. So maybe, I don't know, I had a whole GSC army, that got changed to a Beast of Chaos army, and maybe that might get changed to a Seraphon army. Who knows? Okay, Patrick D, welcome everybody. Okay, by the way, if you want to join our community, it's right here. That's the CanHammer Discord here. It's live and bursting full all the time. So do feel free to join. If you want to support the channel, then like and follow and subscribe and all those kind of things. You can even join and be a member if you wanted to support the show. But nothing we do is pay, so you're welcome to just partake of the content. So I am recovered from my drubbing last night. I'm still impressed that I managed to score 70-something points. But Phil, of course, almost scored 100 points. And so he definitely beat me hard. And it would have been a 20-0 in WTC scoring. But I put up a bit of a fight. But yeah, that army is brutal against that particular style of Custodes army. So yeah, not great. Okay. So let's go into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about, of course, is this guy. The Lion. Lionel L. Johnson, the Primarch of the Dark Angels. So if people know me, when I came back into 40k, like 6th or 7th edition, whatever edition it was Dark Angels was my very first army that I actually played. I mean, I had a Grey Knights army, and after a Deep Strike mishap on my very first game of 40k, where Drago and all the Paladins just died, I didn't play that army, ever. But Dark Angels was my first competitive army, and I had Lion's Blade and all that sort of stuff. And I love the lore around the Dark Angels and the Lion, and he's like a feral kid who like basically gets raised to be a Primarch. It was pretty cool. And so this model is amazing. I mean, so some people are saying the game is going downhill, but the models are getting better and better. I don't know if the game's going downhill, but the models are definitely getting better and better. I'm not really into the whole demon aesthetic, so the Angron thing didn't really impress me, although it's an amazing model. But this model is amazing. Like, look at this thing. The detail is crazy. And of course, he comes with his, holders of things or watchers in the dark. I don't know what these guys actually do other than just hold things, but they seem everywhere they go, they're just holding things. But man, what a crazy army. He's like stepping on, like, it looks like it might be a dead Dark Angel actually. Yeah, it's just amazing. The shield is a nice touch. I love that they gave him a shield. And then there's this. So before we go to the next picture, everybody thinks he looks like Tywin Lannister. And while I agree, he does look a little bit like Tywin Lannister, and he obviously has a lion, and that's probably a bit of confirmation bias going in there. I think actually he looks more like Sir Davos, the Onion Knight. Like, look at that. That is a dead ringer, not Tywin. If you actually put a photo of Tywin Lannister, Charles Dance, it doesn't look as close as Sir Davos. Sir Davos, for sure. Okay, and then we got, of course, more views of this amazing model. And he comes with 4 heads. That means you have to buy 4 models and paint them 4 times. It comes with 4 heads. I don't know which one's the best. I don't know if I could decide. I would have to magnetize them. Magnetize the head. Like, that helmet is just amazing. Like the grill, like the detail on the grill, it's not just like slits. They're like, oh man, that's crazy. And then, of course, with the face and the hood is so Dark Angels, obviously. And then with the helmet and the hood is like, oh man, I wouldn't know which. I literally have to magnetize the head and paint them all because they're just so awesome. So awesome. All right. Yeah, like they're all awesome. Okay, Sir Davos can go away. But yeah, he totally looks like Sir Davos. Okay. So the lion, I don't know. I've not been following the Arcs of Omen story. I don't know anything about how he's coming back or any of those things. I'm not getting back into Dark Angels. I already sold my Dark Angels army, but man, that's an amazing model. Okay, let's go to the next thing. So they, of course, leaked that there are going to be new Terminators. Yeah, I don't actually know how I feel about this. It's not overly exciting for me. I don't have any Terminators, but I can see why they did it. The old Terminators look kind of a little bit out of proportion, like the head's too big, and like the Stormbolters are crappy, and they're small, especially compared to Primaris Marines now. So I totally get why this was done, because they need to be bigger. In fact, like they're pretty big now. Like it makes Custodians looking a little bit small these days. But it is almost exactly the same though. It's like just like a normal Terminator with the old school helmet and everything. I mean, yeah. So I get why it's done, but I'm not particularly overexcited about new Terminators. That's just me. I know lots of people are super excited about new Terminators. And then on the other side, of course, because 10th edition is going to be the 4th Tyrannic War, you have to have the Tyranids. So they're getting apparently a whole bunch of new models. And so if you had 1,000 Termagants, you're going to want 1,000 new Termagants. It looks like the bases are going to be bigger. I don't know. It's hard to tell in this picture. But they are around the same. I mean, they're not even that much bigger. They're definitely more detailed. And the paint job is a little bit better. But they're otherwise pretty similar. But, updated. And I think a lot of the models in the Tyranid range are getting updated. So that's cool. And then I guess everybody else will get their turn eventually. But those are the guys that are going to be in the starter box. Marines, obviously, and Tyranids. All right. So, let's talk about 10th edition. 10th edition, I'm super excited for. As somebody who took a break for almost a year and came back to the game and found it basically to be exactly the same, it's getting a bit stale. I know that may be an unpopular opinion, but it's time for a shakeup. It's been a long time since a total reset. Beginning of 8th, I believe, was the last Index Hammer. That was years, 5, 6 years ago. I know it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it has been. Oh, one other thing. I forgot. I do still have a Dark Angels army, but just one model. And I was reminded of this by Francois, who brought this back over to my basement after I renovated. I still have this guy. Back in my crazy Forge-rolled days. I don't know. Anybody want a Thunderhawk? You can buy it off me. This thing is super crazy heavy. But so I still technically have a Dark Angels army. And I don't even know if he can go in it, actually. That would be fun. Anyway, okay, so yeah. So I think we need a reset, and I, for one, welcome 10th edition, and I'm super excited about it. It's not actually called 10th edition, by the way. Just like 9th was never called 9th edition, but we'll just call it 10th edition for simplicity. It's actually hashtag new 40K, which I believe is the same hashtag as it was before, but anyway, so 10th edition. So they revealed, of course, we already knew 10th edition was coming. I mean, somebody, I'm not going to say who, but they already told me last summer at CCBB that 10th edition was coming out next summer. So I already knew that. But, and it means at CCBB this year, almost certainly we're going to have Index Hammer Free-for-All, which will be super fun. But 10th edition is coming, and it's going to be a big reset. So some of the things they talked about on stream and in the Warhammer community article afterwards, we'll talk about. So number one, it's going to simplify the game, but not make it a simple game. Okay, mincing words there. And it's going to make it a shorter game. How short, we don't know. Right now, some people can spend 4 or 5 hours playing Warhammer. I mean, it took Phil like 2.5 hours to table me. But we did play 5 turns. But like, the game is too long right now. And it's overly complicated. There are too many rules, sources, and references. So any kind of simplification is going to be welcome. And 8th did that until it didn't. But it did simplify things, and nothing says cutting the chaff like Index Hammer again. So, they're going to make the game simpler and play faster. Fine. Simpler, who knows what that means. Probably, they said they're going to cut some rules, they're going to consolidate things, they're getting rid of a whole bunch of stratagems and putting things onto data sheets. You're going to be able to play with 1 page of army rules and your data sheets, which are going to fit on little cards. Kind of like Sigmar. So, actually, there's a lot of 10th that actually sounds like Sigmar. But, that's fine. I'm all for simplification. I'm tired of carrying multiple books to places. I'm tired as a TO of having to download 50,000 different sources of references and keep track of FAQs and erratas and datas and White Dwarf articles and campaign books, and oh my god, like, it's crazy. If you really take a step out of your own little Warhammer world and just look at the thing as a whole, it's crazy. I can't even imagine trying to start the game right now. So this is a way, just cut all that crap. Don't get me wrong, it's going to build up again. It's inevitable. They already said codexes are going to come out, but are going to be a sub-in. So you got your sheet in the index, and when you get your codex, that sheet goes away and you get a new sheet and maybe new data sheets. Fine. If it actually stays like that, I'll be super happy. But I doubt it. I'm sure we're going to see campaign books and White Dwarf stuff and all these extra stuff coming along. But for now, it will be a cool little wipe to start with. So I'm all for that. Shorter games, I am all for it. We should not take us all day to play 3 rounds at a tournament. And then thus, in order to run a GT, you need 2 days. That is a barrier to people attending GTs. I mean, that's why I can't go to GTs. If we could do 5 rounds in 1 day, that makes GTs 1 day and Super Majors 2 days or 3 days. No more stupid shadow rounds going to 2 a.m. Like that, all that stuff goes away. It makes running tournaments way easier for TOs. And if we want to get more people playing this game, we got to make it easier to get into and not have to spend all day to play like 1 or 2 games. So I'm all for that. And if it means I can run a GT in 1 day and we can extend CCPB or CanHammer team now because we got so many players, we need to run more rounds, but we can't because we can't. So it would make all that easier and make each game less taxing, especially if it's also simpler, less things to remember, less things to forget about. So I think all that is only good for players and for TOs. So they said, there's going to be way less CP, but also way less stratagems. They said each army had on average 5 or 6 strats on their sheet, and then other strats might be kind of tagged to certain units because they kind of are already, many of them, and will end up just on the data sheet. So for example, so they gave us the example of the Termagant datasheet, and they have this thing called Skulking Horrors. I can't really read it, this is a bit small, but this is kind of like a out of sequence move, and that could well just have been a stratagem in the current game, and now it's just an ability on that sheet. That's cool, and I'm all for that if it's right on a little card in front of me, rather than trying to go through the book and find the stratagems in 4 pages of text. So I'm all for that. So apparently there's going to be less strats, less CP. There's no more psychic phase. To me, the psychic phase never really made sense, but you had to do it at some point, so make a phase for it. Should it be before movement, after movement? I don't know. But now it's just like, okay, if you have a psychic power, it's on your data sheet. And, if you can do something in combat, then you do it in combat. If you can do something in shooting, then you do it in shooting. Now you don't have to cast it here and then remember it 10 minutes later. You don't have to put a little card down. Like, you just do it at the time when it's relevant. So I think that's great. And it removes a phase and kind of simplifies that all out. And I assume that probably there's not going to be a list of 6 powers. Each psychic unit is going to have like a list of powers that it can cast at whatever time. So that will also simplify things out, which is cool. So morale is now Sigmar called Battle Shock, and it is getting moved. I think to the command phase instead of at the end of the turn. And it sounds like instead of just making you lose 1 or 2 models, which functionally, I mean, as a Custodes player, if I were to, yesterday I almost lost a model to Battle Shock, but I didn't. But we don't normally get Battle Shock. But let's say, if you lose 1 or 2 models, that unit is still functional, can still go and hide in a rune and hold an objective for you and still be as good as it was before. But the new Battle Shock apparently is going to affect how those units can do things, like affect their objective holding capability, or what's now called OC. What's the OC called? Objective capability or something like that. So OBSEC is gone. OBSEC is replaced by a stat line. It's actually called OC. You can see it here. OC of 2 for Termagants. And so let's say that if you have a unit of guardsmen and they fail Battle Shock, their OC will go down. So they're no longer as good at holding objectives. I think that's really cool. And perhaps more impactful, because basically morale right now is not particularly impactful most of the time. Objective control, there it is, yeah. And so, they said that, units that are more kind of good at holding objectives will have a higher OC rating, and like a Dreadnought that's supposed to just go kill stuff will have a lower, Rhino will have like a lower OC rating. Cool. It also gives you a little bit of granularity, and I think we'll come to that when we talk about toughness, but more stratification levels equals more granularity, gives you more things you can adjust and make smaller incremental changes and maybe be more impactful. But you just have more range to work with, whereas everything OBSEC, now it's just low count models. And it's just like, does that make sense? Like, everything's OBSEC. Your whole army OBSEC. But now you're like OBSEC OC1, these guys are like 5, these guys were 4 and now they're 2. Like, I think it might work better, but we'll see. We'll see what the execution is. But it's an interesting concept, and I'm looking forward to trying it out. Army rules on a single sheet, which is cool. And, Mike Brand kept talking about playing from the back of the book where the data sheets are and not from the front of the book where all the rules and strats are. And that's an interesting way of looking about it, front of the book and back of the book. And so he wants people to be spending most of their time looking at data sheets, not looking at the front of the book. And so that's an interesting thing that he brought up. And so army rules on a single sheet, and everything index data sheets and index army rules are all going to be available day 0 for free, and the core rules, which finally, now they're still going to get your money. Don't worry about it. They're still going to charge you for codexes, and if you want to buy the cards, they're probably going to be $60. They're still going to get your money. Don't worry about it. They're not going crazy, but these index rules will all be free. We don't have to buy 5 index books like we did back at the beginning of 8th or 7th. So that's cool. We'll all be able to instantly play our army using index rules right from the beginning. And hallelujah, Forge World 2 also promised day 0. Now we'll see if it actually happens, but it should, because they took over Forge World rule writing. So Forge World as well, free data sheets. So basically we're going to have our whole army for the first time ever all updated at the same time, and not some Frankenstein piece of PDF hanging around the internet somewhere with all different design of data sheets and some out of sync. And finally, we might actually end up with a consolidated set of rules. And free. Sweet. That alone makes me all for it. Okay, so so the other thing he commented on was decreased lethality and increased resilience, which is good. I think that's what we need. The game has gotten way too lethal. I mean, if you watch last night's game, you can see. I mean, our codex is not that old, but the amount of killing that I did compared to the amount of killing that like a basic berserker can do, it's crazy. And like we can all see the AP creep. Everything's AP 2, 3, 4. There's no AP 1 anymore. Definitely no AP 0. The creep of power and AP and lethality is huge, and resilience, except for a few exceptions, is generally not increased. And that's partly because of the toughness thing, which we'll talk about, but so resetting that will be good. And you can see here, now Termagant maybe not a good example, but there's no AP at all on this data sheet. None of these things have AP, and all 1 damage, right? So I think that's a good overall change, and hopefully it might see some of our toughness come back then, if that all the lethality dials down, but we'll see. So towards that end, there's going to be increased durability, and apparently it's going to be toughness not technically capped right now, but it's not going to cap out. It's not going to be a, basically T2 to T8 scale. It's going to be, they said like vehicles will be like T11. And so that just widening, as I said, widening the scale, I think gives us more capability of incremental change and you know, they said that some of the weapons are going to be more designed to kill high toughness, and so they're maybe not as good at killing low toughness, and there might be toughness classes. So we'll see. It was in some of the rumors there might be like armor toughness class versus like infantry or whatever. I don't know what that looks like, but it's interesting that they're messing with the toughness and the strength balance. Hopefully we don't go back to like the stupid comparison table like we used to have, but you know, it's kind of like that now. So we'll see. So if we look at this data sheet, for example, let me just make it bigger here. So we have a decreased number of boxes, and a lot of those things have moved down into the weapons. So we have like 6-inch move, toughness is still there. There was talk that toughness was going to go away, so that is untrue. Toughness is right there. And then you have the save, and then wounds, leadership, and then this objective control. So the attacks now is per weapon down below. Your ballistic skill and weapon skill now is per weapon down below. And the example that they gave is that, for example, a captain hitting with a power fist will be better than a normal person hitting with a power fist, but that won't be in the stat line. It's going to be in the weapon stat line. So that's fine. That's cool. Okay. And this actually is not quite like Sigmar, but maybe a little step towards. I don't know. And then there's strength and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty interesting. You can see here they still have the keywording. And then, of course, they said all the abilities that a unit can do, most of them will be on the sheet itself now. So we see here that there's a synapse thing. And so that's probably, synapse will probably be a rule on that one sheet of army rules. And then this, which might have been a stratagem before, is now an ability that they can just use on their datasheet. Okay, so I'm all for simpler datasheets as well. Okay, so the rule, army building is going to be different. There will no more force org charts or detachment charts or keeping track of this or this or this. Apparently you can just use whatever you want. And in a faction, so they're probably not going to be crazy allies and stuff, and they got rid of all that a long time ago, so that's fine. And then it's going to be still rule of 3, it sounds like, with battle line up to 6. Battle line, so that's another Sigmar term. So battle line, I assume, meaning what we would call troops right now, being able to go up to 6. But again, maybe there'll be rules where you have certain warlords can unlock other things as battle line. For example, if you have Samael as your warlord, then you can unlock bikes as battle line. I don't know. It's probably going to be similar to Sigmar in that way, which would be interesting. Okay, and then I think we already know, but there's probably going to be extra rules for competitive GT play. And that's probably where Mike Brandt comes into it. So, you know, we'll see what that looks like. Does that mean that us competitive players will end up with rules and source bloat again? More than likely. I mean, they're probably still going to have to do balanced data slates, and you know, FAQs and erratas and all that stuff will still be around, which is fine because that's what keeps it good. But yeah, so we'll probably still have that. Oh, and an app. Apparently a working app. Now, they also said the current app was working. So I don't know how much stock to put in that. But there's going to be a working app. He sounded like he's already used it. And that it's going to have all the rules in it from day 0. And it's going to be, if the rules and everything in army building is much simpler, then the app will be much simpler. And it should work pretty well, I guess. Because right now it's just so complex making armies that you need a complicated app. But I hope it works because, you know, I have been using the GW app and it does work well if you have a simple army to build like ours. Not a lot of weapon options, you know, just tick some boxes and you're done. So I'm looking forward to that, to have a working app. And it would be cool if they had actual like BCP integration just from one app to the other. That hopefully is something that maybe they had the foresight to work on, given that it's still one of the main, you know, competitive apps to use. But I guess we'll see. If it means we're going to get a much simpler and easier to read list format, that we don't have to make up our own formats or use BattleScribe, that would be nice. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there if they get it right. So yeah. So overall, I am excited for this wipeage and starting over. I think it's long overdue, and I think it's going to be fun. People still got months ahead of you of playing the current form, but I think get ready for a wipe. Leave everything you know and about this current edition behind you when you start a new edition. It is not directly transferable. The points are also going to be free, and they may not be anything related to how they are now. So you can't even, my advice when you pick up a complete new edition that's like a reworking, you got to just leave everything behind. But we'll still use terms like deep strike and feel no pain. But yeah, so we'll see. In terms of how it affects us, custodies, I have no idea. Nobody knows. But if it means that instead of arguing axes or spears, wardens or guardians, are bikes good or bad, the same arguments over and over again since the Codex came out, years of it, same things, because there's not a lot of difference between all our units. Maybe we're going to have the guardians have the OC, 6, and the wardens are OC 3, but they have this thing that makes axes 8-3. Like, maybe there's going to be some real compelling reasons to take different units for different roles, and we will feel fine with spending our slots with different units. I would love to see like a mixed arms, custodies force. The other thing I'd like to see, and I don't know if this is going to happen, but maybe this granularity with toughness classes, and with OC and all these other kind of changes they're making, maybe that granularity allows us to maybe play like we do in the lore, which is individual, like, guys. That would be cool. Now, I feel like we would need a whole range of bigger models. Like, the custodians need to cross the Rubicon. They need to be a lot bigger compared to the current Primaris Marines. I don't know if that happened retcon lore-wise, but that would be cool if we could play like the lore and be like one-man armies across the table. Yeah. I think, it's always difficult to think, here's the army right now, so therefore this is how it would change to go into 10th. I think you have to think of it like completely from the ground up new. That's what the game is doing, so I think your book, you have to treat that way too. And it makes it difficult. You could, pie in the sky, you could do whatever you want. So I don't know what's going to happen to our army. I'm just excited that the game is going in this direction. I think we'll probably be fine in Index Hammer, and I don't know when we're going to get a Codex, but I think it's going to be super fun. And I tell you what, Index Hammer, if you've never experienced it, if you're a newer player in the last few years and you didn't experience the change from 7th to 8th, which was another complete wipe with Index Hammer, those were good times. I mean, that CCPB that summer, Index Hammer, I think the Marine book had just come out, and whatever the other one was, that was the poster boy at the time. Can't remember. But Index Hammer, CCPB, that was fun. Anybody could bring anything and anybody could win. It was really like the Wild West, and it was super fun. So while it is Index Hammer before all the rules bloats comes up again, take advantage and play lots of games with all different weird stuff. So what is it? Do we still use our codex? No, this is a complete wipe. The current codexes are all gone. You can recycle them. Not right now when the edition comes out. We all get digital rules, one page apparently of our army, and one data sheet each. And that's it. We play from that until we get a codex. So it's going to be a complete wipe. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't take what we know now and trying to transmit it into the 10th edition. Is going to be completely different. And all the data sheets are different. Everything's completely different. So nothing you know now serves as a reference. It could be completely different. So it's hard to predict what's going to happen with our particular army. All right. Obviously, we're going to learn more over the next number of months. Okay. We have some questions that we'll answer on the Discord, and then we'll be finished. Just a short little show. Okay. If I had to pick a cool ability to move onto a datasheet, which one and which datasheet would you put on? Well, I mean, yeah. If you want to pick something flavorful, I think, I think it would be really cool if Unleash the Lion's stratagem just became an ability for our Terminators. If they can't be taken as one. Or maybe for a whole army. So we can live that dream of playing individual models. So you take like 10 Guardians and then they just split. That would be cool. Super flavorful. And that kind of fitting with what they're trying to do, moving like stratagem. Or maybe that just goes onto the Alaris datasheet. They've been told it's been an Alaris stratagem. It's an Alaris only stratagem basically. So maybe that ends up on the Alaris datasheet. After turn 3, any surviving Terminators can all split off and be treated as individual units using this datasheet. Like, that could be a thing. That would be cool. Okay. So with this edition coming to an end, what rule or more general part of game design would you keep for the next editions, and what rule would you get rid of? Well, as I already said, I'd get rid of a lot of stuff. What would I keep? I would keep the data slates. Quarterly adjustments. I think the data slates has been really good for the competitive game. Not only because it shifts the meta up, but they've been pretty good at stomping on really bad things. People, if you've not played for a long time, you don't remember how long crazy stupid stuff would last before it got adjusted. Like double Shining Spear Yanari, the Castellan meta. These are just 2 examples of things that would survive for months and months and months, maybe even a year or more, because it never got balanced. You can't see that happening these days. If you found something crazy, it's either going to get stomped on during the first FAQ, sometimes even sooner, or at the longest you got to wait is to the next data slate. And I think that's only good. So I hope they keep that part of what they've been doing moving forward, and I see no reason to not keep doing that. Everything else, whatever. I can take it or leave it right now. As I said, I'm all up for this complete rewrite. So, okay. Do you think our infantry will see a general rise in toughness to differentiate Custodes from most other infantry in the game? Well, I'd like to. Yeah, like those 2 things I'd like to see. I'd like to see us regain our toughness that we had in the beginning when 2-up armor meant something. And, if armor is still on a D6 roll, which I would assume it is, and we're going back to lots of AP0 and AP1s and way less free Melta -4s, then we will see our toughness come back. The toughness that we pay points for, 2-up armor. And so, yeah, that would be good. I would like to see that. And then, of course, if we can get... That would differentiate us like it used to. I mean, Army-wide 2-up, 4-up was not a thing before. Now, I mean, armies have it all over the place, right? So that's for sure. I'd like to see that. And then, like I said, if it would be nice if we could play with smaller units, individual models, stuff like that. But I don't know. That would definitely differentiate us. What special abilities will move to data sheets? Yeah. So, I mean, we just kind of talked about that. So, how worried are you that they might simplify army building too much? For me, I love building lists in 40k. It's just fun. I actually do not like list building in AOS. Well, AOS is the other extreme, right? It's like blocks, blocks, blocks. And to be honest, Custodes army building is like that. We don't have 5 or 10 points to fill in. We take our guys in blocks, and it comes and goes in blocks. So actually, our army building is already like Sigmar. But I don't think it's gonna be like Sigmar, because it can't be like Sigmar, because our armies are too complicated. But, I mean, there's been a big move to simplify over the years to simplifying war gear. I mean, I guess the Marines getting everything for free is just like the latest crazy example of it, but like less granularity in that way. but there's still a lot of flexibility. And with the removal of the force orgs, and I think it's gonna be a lot simpler to get your head around and way less complicated in terms of stupid stuff like this can't go with this, or this is this, or this is this. This, that's where the complexity of army building is stupid. The complexity with like, oh, this model needs this gun versus this gun. Sure, I mean, I don't think we're going to lose that, but it is too complicated. And while some people enjoy that, I would say that the majority of people do not. So yeah, so I'm actually all for simplification of list building because personally, I think it's a chore. Okay, so those are the questions. All right, guys, so that was just a quick stream tonight just to talk about crazy reveals from last night. Thank you for watching and following and subscribing. I will see you guys next Wednesday for the CanHammer Team Tournament pre-show. I'm probably going to do a board game show maybe next week as well. I don't know. I haven't decided. I have to look at my schedule. But join me definitely next Wednesday, 8 p.m. for CanHammer Team Tournament 2023. And thanks for watching. Thank you, everybody in the chat. And everybody have a good evening.